Malaysia should be the easy one. It is the closest unexamined market to HeyMax's home. Kuala Lumpur to Singapore is the fourth busiest international air route on Earth. Beneath the flights runs a land border that has partially merged two consumer economies, Malaysians working in Singapore, Singaporeans shopping in Johor on Saturdays. English is a working language throughout. The regulatory perimeter is Singapore-adjacent and well-trodden. AirAsia is headquartered there and is already on HeyMax's shelf. By my estimate, a dressed Malaysian launch costs $200,000 to $350,000. That is the cheapest entry this series has ever priced. Cheaper than Thailand's, less than half of Indonesia's. And the verdict is no. The reason is a single number in a policy document. Bank Negara Malaysia caps credit card interchange at 0.60% of transaction value. Effective January 2023, under the payment cards framework. Now hold that against the neighbours. Thailand's estimated band is 1.6 to 2.5%, uncapped. Indonesia's is 1.5 to 3, uncapped. Vietnam's credit band is 2 to 3, uncapped. Malaysian issuers work from roughly a quarter to a third of what their neighbours collect. And every card, every point, every co-brand in that market is funded out of it. This is an independent analysis of whether HeyMax, the Singapore rewards platform this series has examined across 17 volumes, should enter Malaysia. Researched in August 2026 from public sources. Nobody paid for it, nobody previewed it, and nothing in it is financial advice. Australia is this series' destroyed market. A rich, mature, culturally embedded rewards economy that a cap killed. Malaysia is something else, and I have had to give it a name the taxonomy did not have. Malaysia was capped before its rewards culture ever matured. Nothing died there because nothing had grown. I call that a suppressed market. The vacancy is real and unfundable at the same time, which is a worse combination than an occupied seat. There is a second finding, and after 3 markets, it has become the more important one. The Thailand volume's central discovery was that Thai bank points ladder into Royal Orchid Plus and essentially nothing else. One ladder, one airline, a vacancy shaped like the entrant. That was the basis of this series' second unconditional yes. It has not traveled. Indonesian banks already reach KrisFlyer, Asia Miles, and Garuda Miles. And in Malaysia, Enrich accepts conversions from essentially the whole issuer field, while Maybank alone, the country's largest lender, transfers its ordinary reward points into Enrich, KrisFlyer, and Asia Miles. Thailand was the exception, not the template. One Southeast Asian market had a single program bottleneck. Its neighbours do not, and any analysis that assumed otherwise was importing a finding rather than making one, including my own first draft of this volume's research twice before I caught it. So Malaysia is a refusal. But it is a refusal with 2 things worth taking, and they may be worth more than the entry would have been. The corridor, which already pays and costs nothing to deepen. And touch, Ngo, 22 million registered users in a country of 34 million. Toll and transit anchored. Tapped daily by exactly the professional demographic a Miles platform wants, and offering no aspirational exit whatsoever. That is the largest octopus-shaped seat on the belt, possibly the strongest partnership target this series has identified since Octopus itself. Which makes Malaysia the third market running to end the same way. Take the detachable asset, skip the entry. Canada's asset was a treaty to buy. Indonesia's was a product to build. Malaysia's is a partnership to test. 11 chapters, let's begin. Chapter 1, the Causeway Market. Malaysia is the closest market to HeyMax's home that this series has not yet audited. And proximity does most of the analytical work in this chapter, in both directions. The air corridor first, and I want to state the number carefully, because this route attracts stale superlatives. Kuala Lumpur to Singapore held the title of the world's busiest international route for years, and a great deal of writing about Malaysia still says so. It no longer does. Hong Kong to Taipei took the crown in late 2024. As of August 2026, the OAG data puts Kuala Lumpur to Singapore fourth in the world at 447,000 seats, down 3% year-on-year. Fourth busiest on Earth is an extraordinary asset, and I do not want that correction to obscure it. Dozens of daily flights across Singapore Airlines, Malaysia Airlines, and the low-cost carriers, serving a demand mix of business travel, leisure, and cross-border shopping. Asia Pacific holds 8 of the world's 10 busiest international routes, and this is one of them. But note the direction of travel. The Thailand volume leaned on corridor growth. Malaysia's is contracting slightly. So Malaysia's corridor argument has to rest on existing volume and proximity rather than on momentum. That is a weaker version of the same asset. And beneath the flights runs the thing no other market in the series has, a land border. The Johor to Singapore crossing carries an enormous daily flow of commuters, shoppers, and day trippers, and the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone is being built to deepen it. I have no sourced crossing figure that I trust, so I am not going to quote one. But the structural point survives without a number. A meaningful population lives in one country and spends in the other weekly. That matters for a rewards platform in a way that flights do not. A Singaporean HeyMax member who drives to Johor on Saturdays is already a Malaysian consumer. A Malaysian who works in Singapore is already inside HeyMax's operating market. So the corridor is not just a travel route to be monetized. It is a partially merged consumer economy. And it means Malaysia's addressable population overlaps HeyMax's existing one more than any market this series has examined. Now the outbound demand, which is the aspirational half. Malaysian travelers go regionally in volume. Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, Japan, Korea, and the country's own carriers serve that map directly. Malaysia Airlines flies a full regional and long-haul network with Enrich behind it. AirAsia, headquartered there, is the region's dominant low-cost carrier, and its rewards program is already on HeyMax's shelf at 1 to 1.2. So the demand picture is genuinely good. A top 5 global air corridor to home, a land border that merges the two consumer economies, a regional travel appetite, and an aspiration map that HeyMax's treaty rack serves well. Which sets up the volume's real tension. Malaysia has the best proximity of any market on this map, and, as the next chapter shows, the least money to pay for a rewards program. Thailand was the reverse of that in every particular. Further away, uncapped, and a vacancy nobody was standing in. Whether proximity can substitute for funding is what the remaining chapters have to decide. Chapter 2, The Capped Pool. This is the chapter the whole volume turns on, and it is short because the finding is a number. Bank Negara Malaysia caps credit card interchange at 0.60% of transaction value. Debit is capped at 0.10%, or 37 sen plus 0.001%, whichever is lower. International brand debit sits at 0.27%, or 63 sen plus 0.001, whichever is lower. All of those took effect on the 1st of January 2023 under the payment cards framework reissued in August 2022. And they are reviewed on a 3-year cycle from that date, meaning a review fell due in January 2026, whose outcome I could not verify from public sources. I will come back to that in the falsifiers because it matters. Now set that 0.60 against the rest of the map. Thailand's estimated merchant discount band is 1.6 to 2.5%, uncapped. Indonesia's is 1.5 to 3%, uncapped. Vietnam's credit band is 2 to 3%, uncapped. Malaysian issuers work from a ceiling, roughly a quarter to a third of what their neighbours' issuers collect. That is the entire competitive geography of Malaysian rewards, and it explains something a visitor to that market notices immediately. Malaysian premium cards are thinner than Singaporean or Thai ones, and Malaysian points valuations are lower. not because Malaysian banks are less sophisticated. Several are regional operators running considerably richer programs across the Causeway, in Singapore, with the same management. It is because the money that funds a rewards program was legislated smaller in Kuala Lumpur than it is anywhere adjacent. Now the important analytical move, because this series has a market that looks similar and is not. Australia is the destroyed market. The Reserve Bank capped interchange at 0.3% and banned surcharging from the 1st of July 2026. And a mature, rich, culturally embedded rewards economy died. Demand survived. Funding did not. The Australian volume was an obituary, and the Pool Atlas formally reclassified that market closed. Malaysia was capped in a different order. The payment card reform framework arrived in 2014 and 2015, with the current ceilings landing in 2023. Before Malaysian rewards culture ever reached the depth Australia's had, Malaysian bankers publicly expected the lower fees to hit their earnings, and they did. But nothing died there, because nothing had grown to the point where dying was the right word. I want to give that its own name because the taxonomy this series built does not have a slot for it. Not deficit, not completed, not destroyed, not middle, not orthogonal. Suppressed. A market where the funding was constrained early enough that the rewards culture never formed. So there is no incumbent to displace, no devaluation trauma to exploit, and no pool to pay for a challenge. The vacancy is real and it is unfundable, which is a worse combination than an occupied seat. Now, that is a hypothesis, and the arithmetic chapter has to test it rather than assume it. Because two things could rescue Malaysian entry economics from the 0.60 ceiling. The first is that HeyMax's model does not primarily eat interchange. It earns merchant commissions, affiliate rates on travel and e-commerce, and those are set by merchant competition, not by Bank Negara. The Indonesia volume found that seem rich enough to fund a product on its own, and the Malaysian marketplace and travel economy is a real one. An interchange cap suppresses the co-brand cards HeyMax stacks on top of. It does not directly touch the commission that funds a Max Mile. That distinction is the strongest argument for Malaysia in this volume, and Chapter 7 will price it. The second is the bounty economy. Card acquisition payouts, insurance, brokerage. Those are marketing budgets, not interchange. And a capped issuer competing for a scarce affluent customer may well spend more on acquisition, not less, precisely because it can differentiate less on rewards. So the pool chapter's honest conclusion is narrower than the headline number suggests. The card-funded half of the Malaysian rewards economy is capped at roughly a quarter of its neighbours' depth, permanently and by design. The commission-funded half is not capped at all. Whether the second half can carry a market entry on its own is the question this volume exists to answer. And it is the same question Indonesia raised one volume earlier, asked here against a much harder floor. Chapter 3, Enrich and the breadth that already exists. The Thailand volume's load-bearing finding was that Thai bank points ladder into Royal Orchid Plus and essentially nothing else. One ladder, one airline, a vacancy shaped exactly like the entrant. The Indonesia volume found that finding did not travel. Indonesian banks already reach Crease Flyer, Asia Miles, and Garuda Miles. Malaysia looks like Indonesia, and the numbers are starker. Enrich, Malaysia Airlines program, accepts point conversions from essentially the entire Malaysian issuer field. The published partner list runs to Affin, Alliance, AM Bank, Bank Islam, Bank Rakyat, Bank Simpanan Nasional, CIMB, Hong Leong, HSBC, Maybank, Public Bank, RHB, UOB, and Standard Chartered, around 14 banks, plus American Express and Westpac from outside Malaysia. Some of those paths convert at a flat 1,000 bank points to 1,000 Enrich points, which is an unusually legible one-to-one by regional standards. And Enrich works that channel hard. It ran a 20% conversion bonus over 3 days in early February 2026. a 10% bonus from the 7th of February to the 17th of March, and a further 10% offer running before the 18th of August. Those promotions explicitly cover cards issued in Malaysia and in Indonesia. Now read that behavior the way this series reads program behavior. A loyalty program running repeated bonus campaigns to pull bank points into itself is a program that wants feeder volume. It is the same sell mode signal the Thailand volume found in Royal Orchid Plus's Smart Miles Pay, and the same one the Vietnam research found in Lotus Miles Cash and Miles. Enrich is buying its members' balances, aggressively, from 14 banks at once. Enrich also refreshed its own structure on the 1st of January 2026 with revised earning and elite requirements. Silver earns 1.8 points per ringgit, gold 2.2, platinum 2.5. And beyond Enrich, Malaysian cardholders reach further. And here the evidence is direct rather than inferred, because this claim carries the volume's second biggest argument, and I did not want it resting on a summary. Refine Points, the local community's transfer partner reference, runs its Malaysian bank comparison across 3 columns. Enrich, Crease Flyer, and Asia Miles. It states that the listed banks, including CIMB, Maybank, and HSBC, all convert into Enrich. And it says of Maybank specifically that its points transfer into Enrich, Crease Flyer, and Asia Miles. So a single mainstream Malaysian issuer reaches 3 airline programs. Not a boutique premium tier, not an international bank's global product. Maybank, the country's largest lender, in its ordinary rewards program. Which means, for the second volume running, the gap is not breadth. I want to be direct about what that does to the entry thesis. Because 3 markets into this commission, the pattern is clear enough to state as a finding in its own right. Thailand was the exception, not the template. One market in Southeast Asia had a single program bottleneck. Its neighbours do not. So what is actually left in Malaysia? The same 2 things Indonesia left. First, aggregation. Nobody sells one balance that reaches everything at one rate, and the per-bank ratios and minimums vary enough that an optimizer tracks several balances at once. That is real, but it is a convenience argument rather than a possibility argument. Second and more promising, portal earn. Malaysian rewards are earned on card rails at rates a capped issuer sets. Nobody pays Malaysians miles for shopping through a portal on top of the card they already hold. That vacancy is unfilled there exactly as it is in Indonesia. And Chapter 2's finding gives it more weight in Malaysia than anywhere, because portal commissions are the one part of the funding stack that Bank Negara's ceiling does not touch. There is also a specific competitive fact worth flagging for the ledger. AirAsia is headquartered in Malaysia. Its rewards program is already a HeyMax partner at 1:1.2, and in 2026, AirAsia points spent across the Move super app for rides, food, shopping, and vouchers. That is a closed super app loop rather than an aspirational currency. But it is a closed loop run by a counterparty HeyMax already holds a treaty with in that counterparty's home market. The ledger has to decide whether that is an asset or an awkwardness. The incumbent map, then, an anchor that is open, hungry, and already fed by 14 banks, breadth that already exists, and one genuine vacancy, portal earn, sitting on the only uncapped part of the funding stack. Chapter 4, Touch and Go, and the biggest octopus seat on the belt. Every market volume in this series looks for the transit-anchored daily payment habit, because Hong Kong taught the series what one is worth. Octopus sat in Hong Kongers' pockets. It was tapped multiple times a day by exactly the professional demographic a Miles platform wants, and it offered rewards with no aspiration attached. That configuration is why you happened, and it is why the Thailand volume ranked Rabbit as the highest value lattice deal in that country. Malaysia has the largest version of that seat anywhere on the belt, and almost nobody analyzes it that way. Touch and Go e-wallet reports more than 22 million registered users and more than 20 million active as of 2026, in a country of roughly 34 million people. Sit with that ratio for a moment. It is operated by TNG Digital, a joint venture between the Touch and Go Group and Ant Group. It handles QR payments, Do It Now and FPX top-ups, and through a feature called GeoPlus, it pays daily interest on idle balances, liquid enough that the float automatically pays your tolls. And that last detail is the whole point. The original Touch and Go card is the toll and transit instrument. It is how Malaysians pay to drive, to park, and to ride. The wallet inherited that habit and extended it into general retail. E-wallets now carry roughly 37% of Malaysian online transactions, and that share is rising toward 2030. So, transit and toll anchoring, near universal penetration in the addressable population, daily frequency, an investment feature that keeps balances resident, and as far as the public record shows, no aspirational exit at all. Points and cashback, not miles. On the Hong Kong playbook, that is the single highest value lattice candidate in Malaysia, and arguably the strongest one this series has identified in any market since Octopus itself. With one caveat that I am not going to bury. Ant Group co-owns it. The Indonesia volume established a rule that has already earned its keep. A digital payments business is a partnership candidate when it is a payments business first and an ecosystem second. And it is a no-deficit giant when the order is reversed. Bank rides Shopee. Bank Jago sits inside GoTo. Neither of them needs a partner, and neither of them has a deficit to fund. Whether TNG Digital behaves like an independent operator seeking differentiation, or like an arm of a much larger ecosystem, is the question that decides its grade. And it is not answerable from the public record. So it goes to the ledger as the top candidate with an explicit diligence flag, not as a certainty. The digital banks around it are easier to grade, because the Indonesia rule disposes of most of them immediately. GX Bank is Malaysia's first operational digital bank, backed by GXS, the Grab and Singtel joint venture. Grab-owned, ecosystem first, running its own rewards logic, decline on exactly the reasoning that declined Bank and Bank Jago. Boost Bank is a joint venture between Boost and RHB Banking Group. Ian Bank is the banking arm of the retailer. Both are closer to Bank First than GX is, and both plausibly hold the Hong Kong configuration: a card product, regulatory access to a pool, a customer they must pay to acquire, and nothing aspirational to offer. But both are also operating against Chapter 2's ceiling, which caps what their card economics can fund and therefore caps what a partnership is worth to either side. So that is the honest shape of Malaysia's lattice: one outstanding candidate carrying a diligence flag, two plausible mid-size ones constrained by the same cap that constrains everything there, and one clear decline. And it raises the question the verdict chapter cannot dodge. Malaysia has the best transit payment partnership target in Southeast Asia, sitting inside the worst-funded rewards pool in Southeast Asia. Those two facts pull in opposite directions, and the arithmetic has to price which one wins. Chapter 5: The Record and the Community That Already Knows. Every market volume in this series asks two questions that have nothing to do with market structure. What has the company actually done here, and who is going to be writing about it when it arrives? Malaysia has an unusually clear answer to both, and they point in opposite directions. The record first. HeyMax's own Series A communication from January 2026 describes two operating markets: Singapore and Hong Kong, with Hong Kong named as the company's first international market, entered in 2025. Its stated expansion is Japan, Taiwan, and Australia by the end of 2026. Malaysia is not mentioned. Neither is Indonesia, Thailand, or the Philippines. An earlier report has the chief executive naming Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia and the Philippines as launch targets within the year. So Malaysia has been named as an ambition and never claimed as a market. That is the same finding the Indonesia volume made, and it deserves the same treatment. An unlocked sign-up gate is not an entry. This series drew that distinction in the Philippines volume, and it holds here. What HeyMax does hold in Malaysia, itemized. The AirAsia Treaty at 1 to 1.2, with AirAsia headquartered in Kuala Lumpur, which makes this the only market on the belt where a HeyMax partner is a national champion. The travel floors Malaysian inventory, monetizing the corridor today. And the destination earn thread for members physically in Malaysia right now, which given the land border is a larger population than the flight numbers alone suggest. So the record is a 0. But it is the least meaningful 0 in the commission, because Malaysia is the one market where a member can be inside HeyMax's operating footprint on a Friday and inside Malaysia on a Saturday without either fact changing. Now the community. And here Malaysia is further along than anywhere this series has looked outside Singapore itself. The Malaysian Points scene is English language, analytical, and genuinely good. Refined Points publishes structured transfer partner guides, the same guide that settled Chapter 3's breadth question by laying out which banks reach Enrich, KrisFlyer, and Asia Miles in a comparison table. Boleh Miles covers the airline transfer landscape. Ringgit Plus runs personal finance journalism with real card analysis behind it. And it was Ringgit Plus that reported Enrich's 2026 restructuring and its bonus conversion campaigns in detail. Read the developmental stage the way the American volume taught the series to. A community that maintains structured comparison tables and covers program changes as news is a community in the audit phase, not enthusiasts trading tips. Analysts publishing. Thailand sat earlier than that, pre-professional referral economics arriving but not dominant, which is why that volume identified an earned standing window still open. Indonesia sat past it, professionalized and disillusioned, telling readers to buy American credit cards. Malaysia sits past it too, but without the disillusionment. The Malaysian scene is not angry. It is simply competent, and it has been competent for a while. That combination has a specific consequence for reception, and it cuts both ways. The good half, a HeyMax entry would be verified quickly and fairly. The 3 claims, portal earn on top of the card, 1-to-1 with no ratio table, reach beyond what the banks offer, are all checkable in an afternoon by people who check things for a living. Nothing about the product needs the member to take it on faith. The bad half, and it is the one that matters, there is no standing left to earn. The Thailand volume's central go-to-market asset was that a platform arriving now could earn community advocacy rather than buy it. In Malaysia, that window closed years ago. An entrant arrives into a mature English-language media layer with established referral economics and pays market rate for coverage like everybody else. And notice what that does to the cheapest entry in the series. Chapter 7 prices a dressed Malaysian launch at $200,000 to $350,000, partly because there is no language build. But the community saving that Thailand enjoys free, credible, sustained advocacy from people who verified you early is not available at any price here. So the record says HeyMax has never claimed Malaysia. The community says Malaysia would understand HeyMax immediately and charge for saying so. The formal machinery, the gap hunt, the arithmetic, assembles the verdict from here. Chapter 6, the gap hunt. The ownership test applied to Malaysia. For each candidate vacancy, 2 questions. Is it real? And if it is real and valuable, why has nobody filled it? A gap that survives the second question is a gap. A gap that does not is a place somebody already looked, priced, and walked away from. That second question is the one doing the work in this chapter, and it produces an answer this series has not had to write before. Candidate 1, the aggregated currency. Not transferability, Chapter 3 established that Malaysia already has it, from 14 banks into Enrich and from Maybank into 3 programs. The aggregation of it. Today, a Malaysian optimizer tracks several bank balances at several ratios with several minimums and moves them separately. Is that real? Yes. It is the same fragmentation tax the Indonesia volume found, and HeyMax's product removes it. Now the ownership test. The banks cannot aggregate across each other. The airlines will not. An aggregator threatens each of them individually. The super apps could and will not. So the natural owner is a platform outside the issuers holding treaties into all the destinations. HeyMax's shape. But price the prize honestly. In Thailand, the entrant would sell optionality to people who have none. In Malaysia, it sells tidier optionality to people who already have plenty. That is a convenience argument, and convenience arguments convert at convenience prices. Candidate 2, Portal Earn. Malaysian rewards are earned on card rails at rates a capped issuer sets. Nobody pays Malaysians miles for shopping through a portal on top of the card they already hold. Ownership test. The marketplaces could pay in miles instead of coins and do not, because coins retain and miles release. Cashback sites pay cash, which does not compound into aspiration. The affiliate networks have no consumer product. Natural owner. A consumer platform with treaties. And this is the genuine vacancy, unfilled, uncontested, and sitting on the only part of the funding stack Bank Negara's ceiling does not reach. Candidate 3, the transit rail. Touch and go, 22 million registered users, toll and transit anchored, no aspirational exit. Chapter 4 made the case at length. Ownership test returns a partner rather than an entrant, and the sequencing rule applies. Available after a local operation exists, or, uniquely here, possibly before one, since the corridor already puts HeyMax members on Malaysian soil weekly. Candidate 4, the coalition daily spend exit. And here Malaysia diverges from its neighbours in a way worth naming. Thailand had the one at 23 million members. Indonesia had Alfamart, Indomaret, and Telkomsel. Malaysia's daily spend loyalty is more fragmented. No single coalition dominates the way Centrals does in Bangkok, which means there is no one counterparty whose travel exit deficit is large enough to build a lattice deal around. A fragmented incumbent field sounds like an opportunity. It is the opposite. It means more doors, each worth less. Now the hunt's verdict, and the finding that makes this chapter unusual. 2 of the 4 candidates are real, Portal Earn, Cleanly, and Aggregation partially. Both have the entrant as their natural owner. On the Thailand template, that would be a green light. It is not, and the reason is that the ownership test asks the wrong question in a capped market. In every previous volume, why has nobody filled this? Had answers about capability, incentive, or timing. Somebody could not, somebody would not. Somebody had not got round to it. In Malaysia, the answer is different. Nobody filled it because the fill does not pay. The vacancy is not defended. It is not contested. It is simply not worth enough to anyone, because the surrounding rewards economy is funded at a quarter of its neighbor's depth. That is what a suppressed market does to a gap hunt. It returns real vacancies with the entrant as natural owner, and none of them are worth taking on their own terms. Which is why this volume's yes is a partnership and a corridor rather than an entry. The gaps here are genuine, the economics under them are not. The arithmetic proves it next. Chapter 5, Entry Economics Against a Ceiling. The arithmetic chapter. And Malaysia's is the most constrained this series has run on a market it has not already refused. The funding side, split in 2. Because in Malaysia the 2 halves behave completely differently. The card-funded half is capped. Bank Negara's 0.60% credit ceiling means Malaysian issuers work from roughly a quarter to a third of the interchange their Thai, Indonesian, and Vietnamese counterparts collect. Every bounty a Malaysian bank pays for a new cardholder, every point it funds, every co-branded underwrites, comes out of a pool that was legislated smaller. This is not a forecast. It has been the operative reality since January 2023, and Malaysian bankers said publicly at the time that it would hit their earnings. The commission-funded half is not capped at all, and this is the argument that keeps Malaysia alive. Travel affiliate commissions run at the vertical's invariant 10 to 25%, set by merchant competition rather than by the central bank. Malaysian e-commerce runs the same Shopee and TikTok shop economics, the Indonesia volume priced as the richest on the map, with Lazada strong there too. And Malaysia's travel demand is real. A fourth busiest on-earth corridor to Singapore, a land border, and a regional outbound appetite. So the funding verdict has an unusual shape. HeyMax's own earn engine is largely cap immune. The ecosystem it stacks on top of is not. A Max Mile funded by a Shopee commission does not care what bank Negara set. But the co-brand card underneath the member's wallet, the thing that makes stacking worth doing, is thinner there than anywhere adjacent, which weakens the combined proposition even though it does not weaken HeyMax's own rate. Now the competitive rate war. Enrich earns 1.8 points per ringgit at silver, 2.2 at gold, 2.5 at platinum. And 14 banks convert into it, some at a clean 1-to-1 on points. Against that, HeyMax offers portal earn on top of the card, 1-to-1 transfers with no ratio table, and reach beyond the 3 or 4 programs Malaysians already access. I am going to apply the discipline, the Indonesia volume, established rather than restate it. Do not compare a portal rate against a card rate as though the member had to choose. They stack. The Malaysian pitch is additive, and the honest framing is this. Malaysia's card rates are weak because of the cap, which makes the incremental portal earn proportionally more valuable to the member there than it would be in an uncapped market. That is a genuine and slightly counterintuitive point in Malaysia's favor. It is the best argument in this chapter. Now the costs. A Dress Malaysian launch is the cheapest this series has ever priced, and by some distance. English is a working language throughout the market. The regulatory perimeter is well trodden and Singapore adjacent. There is no script problem, no honorific problem, no separate support language build. The merchant floor runs through affiliate networks HeyMax already uses, and the corridor is a 2-hour flight or a bridge. My estimate, and it is an estimate, calibrated against the Thailand and Indonesia models rather than measured, is $200,000 to $350,000 US for a credible first year. Below Thailand's $300,000 to $500,000. Well below Indonesia's $500,000 to $800,000. And now the problem, stated plainly. Cheap to enter is not the same as worth entering. The beachhead is a Malaysian affluent optimizer tier that is smaller than Thailand's in absolute terms, holds thinner cards because of the cap, and already has multi-program access through 14 bank-to-enrich paths. The revenue per member is structurally lower than in an uncapped market because the whole rewards economy those members participate in is funded at a quarter depth. So Malaysia's arithmetic produces an answer this series has not seen before. The cost side clears easily, and the revenue side is capped by statute. Thailand's problem was that the entry needed a treaty. Indonesia's was that the prize was too small for the cost. Malaysia's is that the prize is permanently limited by a number in a policy document, and no amount of execution changes it. The stress tests are short. There is no QR clock there in the Indonesian sense. Malaysia's e-wallets are large, but they run on card and do it now rails rather than on a mandated zero-fee tier. Nobody made the alternative free. The ringgit is stable enough not to add the currency risk Indonesia carries. And the anchor is not fragile. Malaysia Airlines is in better shape than Thai Airways or Garuda, and Enrich is actively buying bank points. Which leaves exactly one variable: whether a cap-immune commission engine can carry a market whose entire card economy is capped, and whether the resulting business is big enough to be worth the attention it consumes. Chapter 6: The Partnership Ledger and the Battlefield. The 5 questions run against Malaysia's field. What deficit does this counterparty have? Can the funding ceiling pay for the fix? Is the governance sound? Does the demographic overlap? Does the deal replicate? Touch N Go and TNG Digital. Grade A- and the volume's headline asset. Deficit, 22 million registered users, 20 million active, in a country of 34 million. Anchored on tolls and transit, tapped daily, and carrying rewards with no aspirational exit. That is the Octopus configuration at higher penetration than Octopus itself achieved relative to Hong Kong's population. Funding, transit, and toll earn is thin margin by nature. So this is a distribution and co-marketing deal rather than a rich merchant-funded one. The value is reach, and the reach is extraordinary. Governance, this is where the diligence sits. Ant Group co-owns TNG Digital. The Indonesia rule, a payments business is a candidate when it is a payments business first and an ecosystem second, has to be tested here, rather than assumed in either direction. TNG does not obviously behave like an arm of a commerce ecosystem the way Cbank behaves like Shopee's. Its GO plus product and its toll franchise are its own. But I cannot resolve it from the public record, and I am not going to grade it as though I had. Demographics, near universal in the addressable tier. Replication, it is the Octopus play, so yes. 4 clear, 1 flagged, grade A-. And the flag is a reason to have the conversation carefully, not a reason to skip it. Enrich and Malaysia Airlines, grade B+, and possibly a seller. Deficit, none obvious. It is fed by 14 banks and running its own bonus campaigns. But read the behavior. A program buying members' balances that aggressively, repeatedly, across a whole issuer field is a program that wants feeder volume. That is the same sell mode signal this series read in Royal Orchid Plus's Smart Miles Pay and in Lotus Miles Cash and Miles. Funding, unknown. And this is the volume's open question. There is no public Enrich wholesale price. The regional prior says Southeast Asian flag carrier programs in feeder-hungry postures sell inside the funding ceiling. Governance, Malaysia Airlines is in better shape than Thai Airways or Garuda. No restructuring overhang. No sovereign fund turnaround deadline. That makes it the soundest anchor counterparty on the belt, which is not nothing. Demographics exact, replication total. And here is the interesting consequence. An Enrich treaty is worth having whether or not HeyMax ever enters Malaysia. It adds a Malaysian anchor to the shelf for members who fly there, and it costs a negotiation rather than an entry. That is the Canada shape again. Boost Bank and Ian Bank, grade B-. Both are closer to Bank First than GX is, and both plausibly hold the Hong Kong configuration. Both are also operating against Chapter 2's ceiling, which caps what their card economics can fund and therefore caps what any partnership is worth to either side. Real, small, repeatable. And the declines with reasons. GX Bank, Grab and Singtel owned, ecosystem first, running its own rewards logic. The same decline as Cbank and Bank Jago. Grab Malaysia, capability to build, no incentive to rent. Shopee and Lazada Malaysia, closed-loop coin economies, merchant floor relationships only. And AirAsia, which needs its own note. AirAsia is headquartered in Malaysia. Its rewards program is already a HeyMax partner at 1 to 1.2, and in 2026, its points spend across the Move super app for rides, food, shopping, and vouchers. So HeyMax holds a treaty with a Malaysian company that is building a closed super app loop in its home market. That is not a conflict. The treaty covers transfers out, and Move's loop is a different product. But it does mean the most prominent Malaysian travel brand on HeyMax's shelf is simultaneously constructing exactly the kind of enclosed rewards economy this series spends its time analyzing. Worth watching, not worth worrying about. Now the threats priced, and they are unusually quiet. There is no QR clock here in the Indonesian sense. Malaysia's e-wallets are large, but they run on card and do it now rails rather than on a mandated zero-fee tier. Nobody made the alternative free. The incumbent response flank barely applies. The banks already offer breadth, so there is no roster for them to widen in response. The regulatory flank has already fired. That is the whole volume. The super app flank is low and structural. Grab already owns a bank there. If it wanted a transferable currency, it would build from a stronger position than any entrant could reach, which produces the most unusual battlefield in the series. Almost nothing threatens an entry into Malaysia because there is very little worth taking. The risk register is quiet for exactly the same reason the opportunity register is. A capped pool deters everyone equally. The ranking against 16 prior volumes comes next. Chapter 7, Malaysia against the series and what 3 markets taught. The comparison chapter. And because Malaysia is the 3rd market in this commission, it has a second job, saying what the run of 3 has established that no single volume could. Malaysia's placement first. Against Australia, the closest structural relative. Both are capped markets, and the caps are the whole story in each. But Australia was capped at 0.3% after building a rich, mature, culturally embedded rewards economy, and that economy is dying. The Australian volume is an obituary, and the pool atlas reclassified the market closed. Malaysia was capped at 0.60% before its rewards culture ever matured. Nothing died there, nothing had grown. Same mechanism, opposite biography, and that is why I have called Malaysia suppressed rather than destroyed. Against Thailand, the contrast is total, and it runs the other way on every axis except cost. Thailand, uncapped pool, 1 ladder, 1 airline vacancy, an anchor to win, a pre-professional community, $300,000 to $500,000 entry, and a clean yes. Malaysia, capped at a quarter the depth, breadth already solved by 14 banks, an anchor that is sound but already fed, an analytical English language community, $200,000 to $350,000 entry, and a no. Malaysia is cheaper and worse, which is the pairing that makes it instructive. Against Indonesia, the resemblance is close. Both have breadth already, both fail on prize size, both end in take the asset, skip the entry. The difference is, Indonesia's pool is uncapped but undercut by a free QR rail, and its prize is limited by a tiny card tier. Malaysia's pool is capped by statute, and its prize is limited by that cap. Indonesia's detachable asset is a product to build. Malaysia's is a partnership to test, and Malaysia's is better, because Touch and Go at 22 million users is a bigger single prize than an Indonesian pour-to-learn wedge. Against Canada, the middle market, same shape, different asset. Canada had a treaty worth buying without the country. Malaysia has a partnership worth testing without the country. Ranked, Malaysia sits below Thailand and below Vietnam's prospects, roughly level with Indonesia and Canada, above the destroyed and completed markets, cheapest to enter, near the bottom on reason to. Now the second job, what 3 markets in a row have established. 1. Thailand was the exception, not the template. This is the most important correction of the Commission, and I want it stated as a finding rather than an aside. The Thai discovery, that bank points ladder into 1 airline and stop, grounded this series' second unconditional yes. It does not generalize. Indonesian banks reach Crease Flyer, Asia Miles, and Garuda Miles. 14 Malaysian banks reach Enrich, and Maybank alone reaches 3 programs. 1 Southeast Asian market had a single program bottleneck. Its neighbours do not. Any future volume that opens by assuming a breadth vacancy is importing a finding instead of making one, and I made exactly that mistake in this Commission's early research. Twice, before catching it. 2. The funding question has split in half. Every earlier volume in this series treated interchange as the pool that funds rewards. 3 markets have now forced a distinction. There is a card-funded half, which regulators can and do cap. Bank Negara at 0.60, the Reserve Bank of Australia at 0.3. And there is a commission-funded half, set by merchant competition, which no regulator on this map has touched. HeyMax's own earn engine sits mostly in the second half. That makes the platform far more cap-resistant than the co-brand ecosystem it stacks on top of. And it is why Malaysia's refusal rests on the surrounding economy being thin, rather than on HeyMax's own rate being unfundable. 3. The ecosystem first rule, which has now paid for itself 3 times. A payments business or a digital bank is a partnership candidate when it is a bank first and an ecosystem second, and a no-deficit giant when the order is reversed. It declined Cbank, Bank Jago, and Alo in Indonesia, and GX Bank here, in each case without a meeting. It is the most reusable thing this commission has produced. 4. The detachable asset keeps recurring. Canada, Indonesia, Malaysia, 3 refusals, 3 assets worth taking without the country attached. That is now a pattern rather than a coincidence, and it suggests the right question for a mature platform is often not should we enter, but what here is separable from entering. The verdict follows. Chapter 8, The Verdict and the Falsifiers. The verdict, no on entry, yes on the corridor, and yes on one conversation. Malaysia is the cheapest market this series has ever priced, and one of the least worth entering. Holding both of those in a single sentence is the whole finding. The refusal first, with its reasoning compressed. Bank Negara caps credit interchange at 0.60%. That is a quarter to a third of what Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam's issuers collect. It has been operative since January 2023. And it is not a forecast or a risk, it is the floor the entire Malaysian rewards economy stands on. Every member HeyMax would acquire holds a thinner card than their regional equivalent, participates in a shallower points culture, and generates less of the surrounding economics that make a rewards platform work. On top of that, breadth is not the gap. 14 Malaysian banks already convert into Enrich, some at a flat 1,000 for 1,000, and Maybank alone reaches Enrich, KrisFlyer, and Asia Miles. The Thai vacancy, one ladder, one airline, does not exist there. Which means the entrance pitch is convenience and stacking rather than possibility. Exactly as in Indonesia, but with less money in the market to pay for it. And the prize is small. A Malaysian affluent optimizer tier smaller than Thailand's in absolute terms, holding capped cards already served on breadth. Now the yes, because there are 2, and they are worth more than the refusal costs. The corridor, Kuala Lumpur to Singapore, is the 4th busiest international route on Earth at 447,000 seats, and beneath it runs a land border that has partially merged 2 consumer economies. HeyMax members are in Malaysia constantly, flying, driving, shopping in Johor on Saturdays. Every one of those bookings already monetizes through the travel floor. Merchandising Malaysia properly and switching on destination earn for members physically there costs approximately nothing and captures most of the available value. This is the same Phase 0 move the Indonesia volume recommended. And here it is even cheaper, because the border makes those members Malaysian consumers already. And Touch and Go, 22 million registered users in a country of 34 million, toll and transit anchored, daily frequency, and no aspirational exit. That is the largest octopus-shaped seat on the belt, and possibly the strongest partnership target this series has identified since Octopus itself. It carries a real diligence flag. Ant Group co-owns TNG Digital, and the Indonesia rule says an ecosystem-first payments business has no deficit to fund. But the flag is a reason to have the conversation carefully, not a reason to skip it. One meeting resolves it. That gives Malaysia the same structure the Canada volume found and the Indonesia volume repeated. Take the detachable asset. Skip the entry. Canada's asset was a treaty to buy. Indonesia's was a product to build. Malaysia's is a partnership to test and a corridor to merchandise. 3 markets, 3 refusals, 3 things worth having anyway. One taxonomic note before the falsifiers. This series has classified markets as deficit, completed, destroyed, middle, or orthogonal. Malaysia fits none of them cleanly. Australia is the destroyed market. A rich, mature rewards economy killed by a cap. Malaysia was capped before its rewards culture ever matured, nothing died, because nothing had grown. I have called that suppressed. A market where the funding was constrained early enough that the culture never formed, leaving a vacancy that is real and unfundable at once. Whether that earns a permanent place in the taxonomy depends on finding a second example. And I am not going to promote a category on one case. Now the falsifiers, ordered by likelihood. 1. The January 2026 review. Bank Negara's ceilings run on a 3-year cycle from January 2023, so a review fell due in January 2026. I checked 3 independent sources: Bank Negara's own framework page, Bank Rakyat's published summary, and Bank of China Malaysia's customer notice. All 3 still state 0.60% credit, 0.27% international brand debit, and 0.10% domestic brand debit, effective January 2023, with no 2026 adjustment recorded anywhere. I want to be precise about what that establishes because it is less than it sounds. It is the absence of public evidence of a change, not confirmation that the review concluded without one. The framework itself allows Bank Negara to move the review date in writing. So 0.60% is the last documented ceiling, and this volume rests on it. But if a revision surfaces that raised it materially, the central objection here weakens immediately. That is a document lookup rather than a judgment call, and it should be the first thing anyone checks before acting on this chapter. 2. The commission engine carries it anyway. Chapter 7 found HeyMax's own earn to be largely cap immune. If port-to-learn economics in Malaysia measure out at the top of the regional band, the entry cost of $200,000 to $350,000 is low enough that the refusal becomes marginal. Measurable by running the corridor phase and watching what Malaysian merchant commissions actually pay. 3. Touch and Go turns out to be bank first. If TNG Digital behaves as an independent operator seeking differentiation rather than as an ant subsidiary, a Miles on Tolls deal at that penetration would be worth more than the entry it would accompany. And the sequencing inverts. Partner first, then enter behind the distribution. 4. The land border does the work. I have priced Malaysia as a separate market. If the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone deepens the merge far enough, Malaysia stops being an entry question and becomes an extension of the home market's footprint. That would be a cheaper and better outcome than anything in this volume, and I have no sourced crossing data to test it with. 5. Enrich becomes a seller. It is already buying bank points aggressively from 14 issuers. If it opens wholesale to non-bank feeders on terms inside the funding ceiling, the shelf gains a Malaysian anchor at low cost regardless of whether HeyMax ever enters. The Canada shape again. 4 of those 5 are resolvable without entering the country. That is the strongest signal in the volume. Malaysia is a market to work, not a market to enter.